She has not slept properly in 4 days. This is not obvious from a distance. From a distance, she looks like what she is, a capybara, hydrocaras, the largest rodent on Earth, standing at the edge of a Venezuelan wetland at first light. She weighs approximately 65 kilograms. Her coat is coarse, reddish-brown, built for an animal that spends as much time in water as on land. From a distance, she looks fine. Up close, she is not fine at all. The ticks began 2 weeks ago, a few at first, the kind of initial load that any large mammal in a tropical wetland accumulates over the course of a year. Manageable, ignorable, dealt with by the periodic long submersions that capybaras take in water. But this year the rains came early. The floodwaters spread the tick habitat further than usual, and the initial load was heavier than it should have been. She did not get ahead of it, and in the 2 weeks since, the colony has grown. What she is carrying now is not a few ticks. Conservative estimates for heavily infested capybaras in the Venezuelan llanos put the tick load at between 3,000 and 8,000 individual parasites. Amblyomma cajenense, the cayenne tick, is the dominant species here, and every one of them has found a patch of skin to feed on. They cluster densest behind the ears, at the base of the legs, in the groin folds, along the lower jaw. Every warm, sheltered, hairless or thinly haired patch of skin on this animal is occupied. Each tick is drinking. 3,000 ticks drinking simultaneously is a blood loss that registers in behavior. The lethargy, the disrupted sleep, the constant low-grade irritation that never resolves because every minute of every hour, something is biting somewhere. She cannot stay still because the discomfort does not allow stillness. She cannot sleep deeply because the sensation of thousands of parasites feeding does not permit the body to rest. She shakes. The head goes first, a sharp lateral snap that sends the loose skin of her jowls flapping. Then the shoulders, then the haunches. A tremor runs from front to back. The ticks in the deep folds behind her ears do not move. She shakes again. Same result. She wades into the shallows. The water here is dark brown, stained with tannins from the vegetation, warm from 3 days of sun. She goes deeper. Chest, shoulder, chin. She submerges completely, the full body disappearing for 7 seconds while she rolls on the muddy bottom, the fine sediment working into the folds and creases where the ticks are densest. She surfaces, shakes. The water runs off her in sheets. Some ticks, the ones loosely embedded in the thinner-haired areas of her back, have been dislodged. She can feel the difference, a very small difference, in a very specific place that lasts for a few minutes before the remaining parasites reassert the baseline misery. The mud is next. There is a wallow at the edge of the floodwater where several other capybaras have already spent time this morning. The surface of the mud reworked into the particular texture of an animal that has been rolling in it. She goes in sideways, her body dropping to the left, and rolls. Once, twice, 3 times, coating herself in the dark gray mud until she is more mud than animal. She lies on her side in the wallow, one eye up, one in the mud, breathing slowly. The mud seals over the surface ticks. This is the point, to smother rather than dislodge, to cut off air and create a physical barrier between parasite and environment. For the ticks on the surface of her coat, this works. For the ticks embedded in the skin, in the deep folds, in the places the mud cannot reach, it does not. She has tried everything she is physically capable of trying. Submersion, rolling, shaking, rubbing against the rough bark of a dead palm at the water's edge. Nothing has resolved the core problem. The deep infestation is beyond what she can address alone. On a fallen cypress log that extends out over the water 12 meters to her left, something has been watching since before she arrived. 2 crested caracaras, Caracara charaway, have been on that log since dawn. They are large birds, nearly 60 centimeters from beak to tail, with the distinctive black cap, bare red facial skin, and pale throat of their species. They are not vultures, though they will eat carrion. They are not typical raptors, though they can hunt. They are something more flexible than either. Opportunists of the first order, capable of reading a situation and acting on it faster than most birds can process the information. What they have been reading for the past 40 minutes is her. The caracaras' eye is one of the most acute sensory instruments in the wetland. From 12 meters on a bright morning, the female caracara can see individual ticks on the capybara's back, can see the slight movement of engorged parasites, the difference between the texture of the coat, where ticks are densely clustered, and where they are not. What she is looking at is not a suffering mammal. What she is looking at is a meal, a very large meal, delivered without a chase. The male caracara hops once along the log, then again. His partner watches him, then watches the capybara. The capybara is still in the mud wallow, one side coated, the other exposed. She has stopped rolling. Her eye, the one facing upward, is half closed. The female drops from the log. She lands on the capybara's back with a controlled, two-footed impact. Not a strike, not a predatory pounce, but the landing of a bird that has done this before and knows exactly how to do it without triggering a flight response. The capybara flinches, a full-body shudder that would throw a less experienced bird sideways. The caracara holds. Her talons grip the coarse fur without breaking skin. She steadies. She begins to work. The bill of a crested caracara is hooked at the tip like a hawk's, but longer and heavier at the base, built for tearing rather than piercing. In tick cleaning mode, this bill becomes a precision instrument, the curved tip hooking under engorged ticks, the strong base providing leverage to pull them free cleanly. The bird moves in a systematic pattern, left to right, working from the shoulder toward the spine, and every 2 to 3 seconds, something is extracted and swallowed. The male arrives 30 seconds after the female. He takes the rear section, hindquarters, the base of the tail, the upper legs, and begins his own systematic sweep. The capybara, which has now processed what is happening to her, has stopped flinching. She is lying flat on her side in the mud wallow, her body completely still, her breathing slow. The relief is beginning. Not because the infestation is gone, there are still thousands of ticks on her, but because the rate of removal has shifted into something her nervous system can register as different. Something is addressing the problem. After 4 days of nothing addressing the problem, this registers. She lowers her head into the shallow water at the edge of the wallow and holds it there, submerged to the eye line, the upper part of her face just above the surface. The ticks behind her ears, the ones that have been driving her to the head shaking for days, are now accessible from above. The female caracara works down the neck, following the concentration gradient, arriving at the ear region within 4 minutes of landing. The ear region of a heavily infested capybara is extraordinary in its parasite density. The thin skin of the inner ear, the fold where the ear meets the skull, the warm, sheltered crease of the lower jaw. These are prime tick real estate, and they have been fully colonized. The female caracara's bill enters this territory with the confidence of an instrument calibrated for exactly this environment. She works the ear fold, the jaw crease, the eye socket margin. The capybara does not move. There is a moment, approximately 18 minutes into the cleaning session, when the capybara closes her eyes. Not the half closure of a vigilant animal conserving energy. The full closure of an animal that has, for the first time in 4 days, stopped hurting enough to stop bracing against the hurt. Her breathing slows to the rate of sleep. Her heavy body settles further into the mud. The caracaras continue working. The wetland is quiet except for the sound of birds somewhere in the canopy and the faint rustle of water through the sedge grass at the edge of the floodwater. This is the transaction that makes both animals possible in this ecosystem. The caracara gets protein. Engorged ticks are a high-calorie meal full of the blood they have already extracted from the capybara. The capybara gets relief that she cannot achieve through any self-directed means. Neither animal chose this arrangement. It emerged from a line need over thousands of years of shared habitat, refined into the particular efficiency visible right now. Two birds working a large mammal's back with the systematic calm of animals that have done this a great many times. The session lasts 37 minutes. By the end, the two caracaras have between them removed somewhere in the range of several hundred ticks from the accessible surfaces of the capybara's body. This is not a cure. There are still thousands of ticks in the deep folds, in the embedded layers, in the places the birds have not reached. But the surface load is substantially reduced. The constant, low-grade sensory overload of 3,000 simultaneous bites has dropped to something manageable. The male caracara finishes his section first, wipes his bill on the capybara's back, the matter-of-fact bill-cleaning motion of a bird that has finished a meal, and returns to the fallen log. The female works for another 8 minutes, completing her sweep of the neck and jaw region, then follows. The capybara does not move for several minutes after they leave. She is still lying in the mud at the edge of the wallow, her eyes open now, watching the direction the birds went. Then slowly she hauls herself upright, the significant effort of a 65-kilogram animal getting up from lying down, and wades back into the water. She moves differently than she did at dawn, not dramatically, not as if something remarkable has happened, but the constant low-level agitation of an animal that cannot find relief is absent. Her pace is steady and unhurried. She crosses the shallow section of the floodwater, climbs the low bank on the far side, and disappears into the gallery forest at the water's edge. The caracaras watch her go. Then they go back to watching the water. The wetland does not record what just happened. The mud wallow holds the impression of a large body that spent time there, and within an hour, the water will fill that impression and smooth it over. The transaction left no mark on the landscape. It left a mark on the animal. She will be back at this wallow, or one like it, in a few days. The ticks will accumulate again. The cycle is not broken by one cleaning session. It is simply reset. The load brought back to a level the animal can function with, until the next time it needs to be reset again. And somewhere in the wetland, perched on a fallen log, or circling overhead on a thermal, the caracaras will be watching for exactly that moment. This is how this piece of the world works, not through dramatic intervention, through small, repeated, necessary transactions between animals whose needs happen to align. The capybara that cannot clean itself, and the caracara that cannot pass up a meal that does not run, played out against the backdrop of a wetland that has been running this same arrangement in various forms for longer than either species has existed in its current shape. The morning continues, the water moves, the birds watch.